With the departure of Miles Sanders in free agency, the Eagles have a significant opportunity available in their backfield as we head towards the 2023 season. In fact, Miles Sanders left behind 259 vacated carries plus an additional 26 targets. The problem for us as fantasy football gamers is there is no clear answer as to which running back will benefit the most. Will it be DeAndre Swift, Rashaad Penny, or even Kennthe Gainwell? Difficult to decipher running back committees like this typically cause fantasy football drafters to shy away from the backfield altogether. That may be the easy solution, but in many cases, someone emerges from these ambiguous backfields as a major winner. That means the person in your league who figures it out and takes the dive to draft one of these running backs and gets it right will put their team in an advantage versus the rest of the league. The goal of this exercise today is to help you find the correct answer from this Eagles backfield so that you can be the one to make that pick. I'm going to go through all three running backs and make a case for each. And at the end, we'll put it all together and determine which of these Eagles running backs that we want for fantasy football. Let's dig in. We'll kick it off with the polarizing DeAndre Swift. When the Lions drafted Alabama running back Jahmyr Gibbs with the 12th overall pick, it was only a matter of time before DeAndre Swift's run in Detroit would come to an end. And sure enough, 2 days later, Swift was traded to the Eagles for a 2025 4th round pick and a 2023 7th round pick swap. DeAndre Swift's days as a Lion were kind of like a roller coaster. His play was inconsistent, the team never committed to him, and he battled a number of injuries. At the same time, he flashed explosiveness, knack for making plays, and one of the better receiving skill sets in the NFL. For fantasy football, it has felt like every year we're expecting a DeAndre Swift breakout, but it never really happens. However, he seems to always finish as a top 15 running back in fantasy points per game. In fact, he averaged 16.1 fantasy points per game in 13 games in 2021, which was good enough for an RB8 season. Swift started off strong in 2022 with back-to-back top 6 finishes to begin the year. However, an ankle sprain killed the momentum and cost him 3 games. The rest of the season was back to that roller coaster. He added another 6 top 24 weeks, but was under 10 points 4 times. Swift was almost completely reliant on the receiving game as he had just 4 weeks with double-digit carries and finished the year with a career-low 99 rush attempts. But even while playing just 34% of the snaps, DeAndre Swift managed to end the season top 12 in targets, receptions, and receiving yards among running backs. Swift showed he doesn't need a lot of touches to produce RB2 numbers in fantasy football. Of course, to do that, he had to be highly efficient. And among running backs, DeAndre Swift was number 2 in yards per touch and top 5 in yards per route. When given carries, DeAndre Swift was efficient but also explosive, breaking off a run of 15 yards or more on more than 8% of his rush attempts while averaging 5.5 yards per carry. Swift was also number 7 in expected points added and top 3 in fantasy points per opportunity, and that's per PlayerProfiler.com. And all that was in 14 games. Swift surely had his most efficient season yet in 2022, but his 2021 numbers weren't all that bad either. In fact, according to Player Profiler, Swift led all running backs in yards created per touch while finishing top 16 in evaded tackles per touch and breakaway run rate. The point is, when given opportunity, DeAndre Swift has been far better than the general fantasy football community gives him credit for. That means if the Eagles decide to give him a significant portion of their backfield touches, especially in the passing game, DeAndre Swift has an elite ceiling. Rashad Penny's career has been riddled with injuries. But over the last 2 seasons when he's been healthy, Rashaad Penny's been one of the more productive running backs in the NFL. He was a league winner in fantasy football in 2021 with how dominant he was over the last month of the season. And for his career, Rashaad Penny has a yards per carry average of 5.7. To put it into perspective, Nick Chubb's career average is 5.2, Jonathan Taylor's is 5.1, and Derrick Henry's is at 4.8. And if we narrow it down to his 11 starts between 2021 and 2022, Rashaad Penny's average jumps to an amazing 6.8 on 151 rush attempts. Rashaad Penny started off a little bit slow in 2022 before ripping off 157 total yards and 2 touchdowns in week 4. The very next week, though, he fractured his fibula and was done for the season. And that was the way his Seahawks career ended. He signed a 1-year, $1.35 million deal with the Eagles this offseason, and maybe this is the year he's finally able to stay healthy. After all, the presence of DeAndre Swift and Jalen Hurts should take enough of the workload off of his plate to help him stay healthy. Rashaad Penny is a big, physical running back who also runs with great explosion and the speed to rip off long runs. He broke off a run of 15 yards or more 6 times in the 5 games that he played last season, which is more than 10% of his carries. He did that at a league-leading 12.6% clip in 2021, and that's per Player Profiler. Now he gets to work on one of the best offenses in the NFL with one of the best run blocking units in the league. If he can fight off the injury bug, 2023 could be a huge season for Rashaad Penny. Because if you can just capture 70% of Miles Sanders' vacated rush attempts from last year, Rashaad Penny could wind up with his first 1,000-yard season of his career and be a weekly starter in fantasy football. I liked Kennthe Gainwell a lot coming into last season. I thought he had a chance to take a significant role as the passing downs back in Philadelphia. It didn't quite work out that way, but he showed us enough to think that he can play a big part of the Eagles' backfield in 2023, despite the other additions that they made at the position. At 5'8", 201 pounds, he's just big enough to be more than a satellite back. Remember, he ran for over 1,400 yards in 2019 at Memphis while commanding over 60 targets. He's been efficient in the limited opportunities that he's had in the NFL, averaging over 4 yards per carry in each season and ranking number 7 in fantasy points per touch in 2022. Kennthe Gainwell's usage was cranked up in the playoffs when he had back-to-back games with double-digit carries, and he ended the postseason with 33 attempts and 181 rushing yards with a 5.5 yards per carry average. So Gainwell has been good when given the opportunity. Unfortunately, the volume to this point in his career hasn't been enough to be relevant in fantasy football. But if Rashaad Penny and DeAndre Swift battle some more injuries, and neither has been the epitome of health in their careers, Kennthe Gainwell could really be something in fantasy football in 2023. On a limited basis, Kennthe Gainwell has managed to finish number 7 and number 5 in fantasy points per opportunity thus far in his career. There is absolutely a world where the coaches trust him more than the other running backs, or he's the only healthy one for a significant portion of the season, and he winds up as a weekly starter in our lineups. While it's tricky to figure out which Eagles running back we want in 2023 fantasy football, there's little doubt that there's going to be a ton of production from this backfield. The Eagles are one of the best rushing offenses in the league. They led the NFL in rushing touchdowns, rushing DVOA, and rushing expected points added in 2022, and were top 5 in total rushing yards. A lot of that can be attributed to the offensive line, which scored the 3rd highest run blocking grade according to PFF in 2022. Led by Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson, Philly's starting 5 is widely regarded as the best in the NFL. That will certainly incentivize the Eagles to continue to call run plays at one of the league's highest rates. Only the Bears, Falcons, and Ravens ran the ball more last season. That is unlikely to change much, even with new offensive coordinator Brian Johnson calling the shots, considering the Eagles will be playing with a lead often and wanting to run out the clock. But who benefits the most? There's little doubt that the Eagles will take at least somewhat of a committee approach to their backfield. Likely to lead the way in carries, though, is free agent signee Rashaad Penny. Penny is the best pure runner of the group, and he is built for a between-the-tackles role. His explosiveness and speed could really be dangerous running behind an elite O-line. However, Rashaad Penny has a long injury history, and he has maxed out 119 carries in a single season. Assuming health, though, he will surpass that, but it's hard to imagine he crosses the 200 rush attempt threshold. DeAndre Swift, on the other hand, could also approach 150 carries in this offense. As I noted earlier, DeAndre Swift has been far more efficient with his carries than he's given credit for. But where Swift has been at his best is in the passing game. His versatility will really make things difficult for opposing defenses, especially if they believe he's a real threat to run the ball. The Eagles now have elite options in the passing game at wide receiver with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, tight end with Dallas Goedert, and at running back with DeAndre Swift. Unfortunately for Swift, though, the Eagles don't use their running backs in the passing game like the Lions did. While the Lions targeted running backs 115 times in 2022, Eagles running backs saw just 61 targets on a league-worst 12.1% target share. It really makes sense if you think about it, because while Jared Goff is a statue in the pocket, Jalen Hurts has the ability to take off and run on his own rather than checking it down to his running back. So that's going to really hurt DeAndre Swift's ability to reach his full ceiling. Still, Swift will be a major contributor in this Eagles offense. But assuming that both DeAndre Swift and Rashaad Penny stay healthy for the majority of the season would probably be delusional at this point. That's why Kennthe Gainwell remains a viable option at the end of fantasy football drafts as well. He won't get enough work on his own to be a viable fantasy option, but if either Penny or Swift go down, Kennthe Gainwell can make a push for your flex spot. We also need to consider that in short yardage and goal line situations, quarterback Jalen Hurts is going to be heavily involved. This will ultimately cap the ceiling of all three running backs. But the bottom line is, the running back with the most upside in the Eagles' backfield is DeAndre Swift. His number of carries projects similar to Rashad Penny, plus an additional 40 to 50 targets. His explosiveness and underrated efficiency should prove valuable in one of the league's best offenses. As well as having the highest ceiling, his target share compared to the other two running backs also allows him the highest floor. He is clearly the Eagles running back with the best outlook for 2023 fantasy football when we don't factor in cost. However, we do need to factor in ADP and opportunity cost. With a 3-round difference in ADP on Underdog, Rashad Penny looks like the best value. At the discounted rate versus DeAndre Swift, the obvious injury risk and capped touchdown ceiling is much easier to swallow with Rashad Penny. To draft Penny, you're passing up on guys like Brian Robinson, Devon Achane, and Elijah Mitchell, who all have similar ADPs. Whereas when you draft Swift, you're doing so at the expense of leaving someone like David Montgomery, Isaiah Pacheco, and Rachaad White on the board. Not to mention the quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends that are going in that area as well. Rashad Penny may not have the targets to lean back on, but he should lead the team in rush attempts and will be the top consideration at the goal line outside of Jalen Hurts. At a nearly 40 slot discount, I will be drafting Penny far more than I will Swift in 2023. Hey, if you like that video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment on what you want me to talk about next. You can find all my stuff, my rankings, articles, podcasts, more videos like this on YARDSPERFantasy.com. Just download the YARDSPER Fantasy app, and we thank you for your support.